Hey, what's up guys, it's CalebBakes01 back again for another random album review. For today's episode we have the band Blink-182 and their self-titled album from 2003. Now for my random album review series, today is actually episode 7 and we have a little bit of a milestone. The band Blink-182 is actually the first band to feature 2 of their albums within this series, which I think is pretty cool. If you don't remember or you're just unaware, it was actually episode 1 we featured their other album, California. So obviously that was some time ago, but either way I still think it's pretty cool. It wasn't overly unlikely that Blink were going to feature again because I actually own a lot of their albums within my collection, so it's not the craziest thing that they're coming up again, but I still think pretty cool. I have explained before, but the whole randomness process of my random album reviews is I go on Google, pull up the random number generator, whatever number comes out there, I pull that off my shelf, and that's what I feature within the episode. The only time I'll ever turn down an album is if the band or artist features consecutively. So if California was the album that I featured in the episode before this one, this wouldn't be the album that I have here today. I would cross out any Blink that gets pulled, but as I said, that was episode 1. This is episode 7, sometime between. I'm really hyping up something that isn't that amazing, but I think it's a little cool milestone, as I said, for this series. Either way, this album, really excited to discuss this one with you guys today. For a long time, I felt like this was a overlooked and underappreciated Blink album, but definitely through recent time, finally getting the fan appreciation I think it deserves. Definitely becoming a fan favorite and a classic. So I'm really excited to discuss this one with you guys today. As usual, we'll talk a little bit about my history with this album, break down the tracks a little bit, go through the album as a whole, and then of course at the end give it a rating out of 10. So make sure you stick around for that. Feel free to let me know your thoughts on the album in the comments below. We can discuss that together. But without delaying any longer, let's get into it. Blink-182's self-titled album from 2003. So as I quickly discussed there in the intro, for a long time I felt like this was Blink's underrated and most overlooked album. And I'm not gonna lie, that was even the case for myself when I was younger. When I was younger, I more so ran to the fan favorite albums like Enema of the State, Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. And I'm not even gonna lie, I more so hung around their post-hiatus album being Neighborhoods more than this one growing up. But as I got older, I discovered the appreciation for this album, and now it is probably one of my favorite Blink albums. I'm not sure if it's quite number 1. It would be up there with Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. I'm not sure which one's going to take number 1, but definitely one that now is one of my favorites. And I think that's more so the case with everyone else now. I think, as time's gone on, a lot of people would consider this one a classic, and they're finally giving it the appreciation I think it deserves. Originally, I think a lot of people sort of remembered this one for being Blink's last album before their little breakup hiatus that they had. If you're unaware, I'm not sure if this is overly factual, but there's some truth to what I'm saying, but there was a little bit of friction within the band that caused their hiatus, more so between Mark and Tom, and a lot of the tracks on this album, they wrote them separately. Tom was doing his own writing sessions, Mark was doing his own, and even though, you hate to see your favourite bands, have some bad blood and not on the same page, you gotta respect them because they pulled off a lot of songs still. I can't imagine how hard it is to write a song without your bandmates being there. But then to top it off, they pulled off, as I said, majority of the songs here. They did a really, really good job. So obviously, as I said, a temporary breakup, you hate to see it, and them not seeing eye to eye, they still did a really good job. I think another thing that a lot of people would remember this album for is being Blink-182's most experimental and ambitious songs. And what I mean by experimental, there's a lot of tracks on here where they throw in sounds that we haven't really heard from Blink before, but they're happily implemented all the way through. Ambitious, they have songs that definitely stretch out the runtime. Blink are known for having really short, sharp, fast-paced songs, but here they really stretch out the runtime and try some stuff that they haven't tried before. So I think a lot of people would also remember the album for having that. Now, I've also felt this has always been a predominantly Tom-led album, And that sort of also explains the type of album we got and where Tom wanted to take the band and where he wanted to go with Blink-182. He definitely wanted to try more experimental stuff and get a lot more ambitious with the songs and records that they were making, and it sort of explains where he's at currently, you know, with his other band, Angels and Airwaves. He wanted to try new stuff and, you know, experiment and try things that Blink had never done before, and as I said, I think that explains perfectly the album that we have here. Also, being a Tom-led album, he features mostly in the vocals, which I'll expand on in a little bit, but a lot of the songs here are led by Tom. And when I was younger, like a lot of Blink fans, Tom was my favourite of the two vocalists just because his vocals are so unique, and when you hear his voice, you go, yep, that's Tom DeLonge. But, you know, as I got older, I definitely found this appreciation for Mark. He is such an underrated vocalist, and I think the reason why he is so underrated is because his voice isn't, I'm going to be a little bit mean, it's not overly spectacular, but the way he writes and emotes sometimes, yeah, as I said, I just found this appreciation for him as I got older. And it is a little bit of a bummer that he isn't featured too much vocally within this album. He actually only has 2 songs, if I remember right, where he is leading the vocals and completely in charge of the songs vocally. And those 2 songs are Go and Here's Your Letter, and both of those songs are pushed to the back of the album, which sort of sucks a little bit. You know, and I'm not saying that I've completely changed my mind on Tom's vocals. I still really like Tom as a vocalist. I just sort of wish Mark did feature a little bit more within this one, but just sort of what I'm saying is this is a predominantly Tom-led album, and you can tell the direction that he wanted to go with Blink. So I did give a lot of highlight to the more experimental and ambitious stuff here, you know, the ambitious stuff like drawn-out tracks being I'm Lost Without You, or as I said, experimental stuff. They chucked in an interlude on this album. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of interludes, the Fallen interlude is here. They put in intros to a song. They put in an intro to Stockholm Syndrome. Again, not the biggest fan of that, but, you know, they're trying stuff here, and I feel like a lot of people are going to be like, well, I'm an old school Blink fan. Are there still fast-paced, fun songs that, you know, the band were known for? And yes, you know, there's songs like Go, extremely fast-paced and quick to the point. There's Feeling This, there's Violence, there's Here's Your Letter, which I feel like is really underrated, Easy Target. There's still some fast-paced Blink songs on here, which I think are going to please new Blink fans who like, you know, some of their more modern stuff, and old school Blink fans who, you know, hang around albums, as I said, like Enema of the State and Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. I think this is a pleaser for a lot of Blink fans, and if you, for some reason, haven't checked this out, I definitely would recommend it. I think another thing that a lot of people forget with this album is how many fan favourite and well-known titles from Blink are actually on this album. You know, the opening track, Feeling This, even though, as I said, it's a very popular one, I always have felt like it's so underrated. Track 3 is I Miss You. Again, that goes along with the experimental stuff. You got to remember, before this album, had we ever heard a song like I Miss You from Blink-182? No, and you could say the same for their track Down, which again is a fan favourite, but before this album, hadn't really heard anything like it. We also have Always chucked in there. There's a lot of fan favourites on this album. And with that being said, there's also a lot of underrated ones there. I feel like the most underrated one on this album is Easy Target. Not only underrated for this album, should I say, I just feel like it's the most underrated Blink song to date, just off the top of my head. I really do. You know, we have good companion pieces being Obvious and Violence. Both have this emo, grungy undertone, but suit so well. Stockholm Syndrome, there's a good back and forth there. One of my favourite things that Blink do really well is when they share the vocals between Mark and Tom and have this back and forth. Stockholm Syndrome, perfect example. As I said, opening track Feeling This does that really well also. As I said, the only 2 Mark-led songs on this album being Go and Here's Your Letter, both, again, really underrated songs for the album. So I think a lot of people are sort of forgetting how many good songs are actually on this album, or how many well-known, popular Blink songs are from this album. So as I said before, if you somehow are a Blink fan and, you know, you feel like you've slept on this one, go back and check it out. And if you haven't heard this album at all, I definitely would recommend it. Now, this is the most I've had to say for a random album review in a long time. I really loved going back and checking out this album, and even though this was an album I really liked, I found a whole new love for it. So I'm really excited that I get to share it with you guys today in this video. And we'll get to our rating of Blink's self-titled album from 2003 now. I am going to give this album a 9 out of 10, really close to a 9.5. I just feel like this album is just going to keep going up and up. As I said, I'm not quite sure if it's my favourite Blink album, because there's also Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, which I hold really close to my heart as well. But this one has got to be definitely so underrated and overlooked. I would say that it's the most underrated Blink album, but I would say that goes to Neighborhoods. Even though Neighborhoods I feel like is the lesser of the two, I just feel like that one gets overlooked a lot, especially even by the band. The band have come out and said they don't really like Neighborhoods, but I think that one is actually pretty good too. But either way, I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10. I definitely feel like this is a pleaser for a lot of Blink fans. You know, if you're a new fan, an old fan, this has a bit there for everyone. So thank you for joining me for today's episode. As I said, really liked discussing that one. I should also have my tracklist ranking for this album up at the same time. If you're unaware of what that series is, that's where I break down each song on the album and rank it from my least favourite to favourite. So there's a lot of tracks here, so we'll definitely be getting into the nitty gritty. I will link that in the description below. I don't normally do that, but hopefully it makes it easier for you guys to check out that video if you want. As I said, that should be up at the same time. And thank you for joining me again for this video, guys. I really, as I said, enjoyed going back through this album and talking about it with you. Feel free to let me know your thoughts on the album in the comments below, and I will see you guys very soon for another video. Peace.